picking the right quarterback can set your franchise up for a decade or more. Ty Dunne talked to the man who set the blueprint for the Green Bay Packers, Ron Wolf. He joins us on today's show.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. You will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. You don't even have to win it. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Franchises consistently make mistakes, especially at the quarterback position. Ty Dunne talked to Ron Wolf, who is really the modern father of quarterback play, of quarterback picking, of team building. Really, I mean, really, if we're gonna keep it 100 about this, everyone else is copying the model that the Green Bay Packers, or tries to, have set forth. Now, before we get there, quickly. Luke Musgrave looks like he's going to land on IR, dealing with an injury. Matt LaFleur said they hope he comes back this season. That seems crazy. But as soon as he can come back, if they put him on IR now, is week 11. So that's the end of the year. How much is he really going to be able to be a part of this offense, this part of this team, if that's as soon as he can come back? That's tough stuff. Everyone else is back. Romeo Doubs is back. Christian Watson is back. Devontae Wyatt's still hurt, but everyone else, it's Wyatt and Musgrave. Everyone else is available. So we'll see the full complement, really, of the Packers coming up here. Wyatt, not a starter. Luke Musgrave, not a starter. So the Packers' preferred starters, it looks like they're going to have 22 of 22. However you want to divvy up the special teams, like they have their, I guess, the kicker, punter, and returners. So like those are really your core starters. They should be set to go on Sunday. Let's get into it with our pal Tyler Dunne from Go Long, who talked to Ron Wolf. Tyler and I get into team building, quarterbacks, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, all the good stuff. Let's do it. Joining me now, back again on the Locked On Packers podcast, our pal Tyler Dunne from Go Long. And Ty, you guys have been crushing it lately. With a lot of Packers-related stuff. We can see you and Bob McGinn. Like, of course, there's going to be some good Packers stuff in there. But I wanted to talk to you about this Ron Wolf interview that you did, because there's so much juicy stuff in there. Not salacious, because he's not a salacious guy. But I think this has been on my mind the last couple of weeks, this how teams fail themselves and the infrastructure. And Ron is so thoughtful with how he talks about these things, clearly so thoughtful with how he engineered all of this. When you went in, what were you hoping to learn from him?
Thanks so much for having me, Pete. We're great to be back talking Packers, talking NFL with you. As always, you do such a phenomenal job at your own Substack, so great to chat. You know, I think with this show, I wanted to do something different this year, and just the goal is always to get behind that curtain, figure out what is really going down in this league beyond the press conferences, beyond the poll tested narratives that may be pushed by all teams, honestly. Yeah. Because there's a whole other NFL out there. There's a coach for an NFC team. He texted me at one point this offseason. He's like, man, people on Twitter have no clue what's going on with this game. And both of us, like, we often don't really have a clue. It takes like a little something extra to figure out that that's really out there, and to go deeper, go long, right? So that's the goal always. And with Ron Wolf, it just seemed like a perfect time to bring him onto our new show, How the NFL Works, because of everything you just laid out. Where how in the hell, I think you can't emphasize that enough. Like, in 1991, November of 91, when he's hired, the Packers are in real danger of becoming obsolete.
Yeah.
Free agency's looming. They've had 24 years of bad football for the most part, right? Made the playoffs twice, but they've gone through 5 coaches. They're bringing in the legends, Bart Starr, Forrest Gregg. Nothing's really working. And in comes Ron Wolf, who, by the way, he did run a team before in Tampa Bay. Didn't go well with the expansion Bucks.
Right.
He's working under Al Davis all those years. So he has this opportunity to turn everything around. And not only did he turn it around then, right, in 1991 into 1992, but everything that he implemented is still rings true to this day. Where the Green Bay Packers have had this insane, unprecedented run of quarterback play. Ron said it himself. It's like people kind of become a little entitled to an extent, right? Take things for granted because it's easy, but it's easy to forget. And he gets it. Like 24 years of really bad football. We can't forget where the Packers were because since his arrival, everything changed in Green Bay. And I think a lot of teams and a lot of GMs around the NFL can really look to Ron Wolf and that blueprint that he laid out if they want to turn things around.
It did strike me, and we don't need to fall fully down the Aaron Rodgers rabbit hole, though at some point we will. It struck me that the week that the Jets fire Robert Saleh, we have this interview from him, and I guess I didn't know the Jets part of this, that when he was the head of player personnel with the Jets, that they were going to draft Brett Favre. He goes a spot ahead at 33. They're at 34. They were trying to move up, right, to get Favre. A year later, he trades for Brett Favre, kicks off the most unprecedented run in NFL history of the quarterback position. And the Jets have not had a quarterback since then. And yet both Favre and Rodgers played for the Jets. It seems appropriate in a way that is the case. Like that is startling to me. And sometimes it does take a little bit of luck, right? Like 33, he goes to 33. If he falls one more spot, like who knows how the whole NFL is different if one thing changes, like the butterfly flaps its wing in one little way and it all changes.
Dude, and really, they would have taken Brett Favre in the first round of that draft if they had a first-round pick. The Jets, they didn't.
Yeah.
Because they got Rob Moore out of Syracuse University.
Mm-hmm. Legend.
Right, there you go. That cost them a first-round pick because they took him in the supplemental draft. So their only chance at him was at 34, and they were trying to move up. And they thought that they had a chance to get Favre at 32. I believe it was the Phoenix Cardinals. And the Cardinals said, nope, our guy's here. They take a player nobody's ever heard of. And then the Falcons take Favre at 33. So, yeah, I don't mean Browning Nagel. I mean, maybe we have to let that play out. We'll see. We'll let history be the judge there. But Brett Favre, ridiculously close to becoming a New York Jet. But also, I mean, and Favre got into this when we had the show with him last year at Go Long. That rookie year, I mean, he's a third stringer. Jerry Glanville's turning him into a pregame sideshow clown. He's partying his ass off. I mean, he was not taking it seriously. He's getting into bar fights down in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So even then, that's why I asked Ron Wolf in this conversation, like, you clearly knew this was going on. You knew what Brett Favre was doing off the field. And, yeah, he had this strong arm. Yeah, you might have liked what you saw at Southern Miss. And he liked what he saw in a scrimmage that the Falcons had with the Seahawks in Portland, Oregon. That's another little part of it.
It's crazy.
Were there red flags? Like, were you concerned at all? Like, this guy is going to be drinking himself out of football if you trade everything. I mean, you're trading everything for him, right? Your reputation is on the line. Trading a first-round pick for Brett Favre. It was the 17th overall pick. They would have given the Falcons the 5th overall pick if that's all they had for Favre. But he said no. He said, I trusted my gut. I trusted my eyes. This is who I needed. This is who the Packers needed. And we were going to get him by any means necessary. And obviously, it worked out against Cincinnati at Lambeau Field.
I don't know why it has been lost to history how totally ostentatious that trade was. And I don't know if it's because the media ecosystem is different than it. Like, can you imagine if someone had a year after Trey Lance had been drafted by the 49ers, if someone said, here's legitimate first round draft capital, like it seems crazy in retrospect that they did this for a guy who, his career stat line was like he had 2 interceptions and that was it. Like that was basically his entire stat line. It seems impossible that would have happened. And the reason I bring it up is I think the only reason it could have happened is the Packers structure. Like there's just no way he would have operated with that level of impunity if Jerry Jones or if Arthur Blank or someone like that was in charge.
That's a really good point, because he had the conviction. He loved this quarterback, this prospect, needed to get him by any means. They do it. And I think, and Ron Wolf made this point in our conversation, like once Brett Favre got onto the field and it was not clear, but like, 92 into 93, like, okay, we've got something here. But Bob Harlan could see that. Now, Bob Harlan isn't the team owner, but Ron said he did have to clear everything by Bob Harlan.
Mm-hmm.
Like if he was going to sign a player or
Right.
do anything like beyond the minutia. So once Bob Harlan saw that this whole Brett Favre thing worked out, and I should backtrack. I'm sorry, but to backtrack. But so in November of '91, the first game that Ron Wolf saw live was against Atlanta, and he had a chance to kind of watch Brett a little bit in pregame. I don't even think Favre threw that much, but he ran it by Bob Harlan at that point. Like, this is the guy I want. And he said Bob Harlan like choked on his hot dog. He just said, what? This guy? What are you talking? So Bob Harlan was obviously a little skeptical. But once Bob Harlan could see that Brett Favre had it, I think everything else that Ron brought to him, he could sign off on. Like, okay, this guy he's got an instinct. He's got a sixth sense. He knows what he's doing when he's drafting and signing players. So yeah, it took that leap of faith. And I guess that's the lesson here. If you're a general manager, if you're running an NFL team, like, don't overthink it, because Ron Wolf didn't overthink it. He didn't start second guessing himself when he's hearing those stories from the bars in Atlanta. It was, no, this is who we want. This is who we're going to get. And we're not looking back.
So much more Green Bay quarterback talk here to come on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privilege of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks, the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. 100 times your money? Are you serious? With as little as 4 correct picks. Plus, Prize Picks puts their members first. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, secure. And when your picks hit, you can get your money out in 15 minutes. That's all you need. It's the best place for real money sports action. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to get the bonus. It's guaranteed. So what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. I think a lot of teams operate from a place of fear a lot of times. Like, hey, if this doesn't work out, I might lose my job. And I think, it's not like Ron Wolf didn't know that was on the table for him. But to your point, he had his opportunity. It didn't go great. Here you are with this, at the time, moribund franchise, which is crazy for, like people our age to think about what that was like at that time. Like they were essentially the Browns. I mean, minus the Deshaun Watson ugliness, that's what they were at that point. And so we're talking about Lindy and Fonte and all that stuff. Like, it was ugly. I think he kind of just, it seemed like he had a little bit of just like, F it, let's just like give this a shot. And I do kind of wonder if more teams had the leeway to do that, if we'd get some of these more, kind of bold moves. Like, I feel like the league has become so safe.
Maybe like social media is a factor too. Everybody,
I do wonder about that. Yeah.
Yeah, like you think, oh, how is this?
Immediately, the fans let you know how you feel, and you operate again out of that place of fear. Like, I really, it does seem like that, and that's why whenever anyone says the Packers need an owner, I'm like, no. The reason they have sustained this success for 30 plus years is precisely because they empower their decision makers, for good or for ill, to make decisions.
Because those owners, they do have their antenna up. And they might just kind of blow with the wind. Oh, fans are pissed off on Monday because this happened on Sunday. We got to do something. We've got to panic. I mean, look what's going on in Carolina. I mean, that's all of
or New York, like
steroids.
Woody Johnson. Hello,
yeah.
Talk about panic.
There's the panic right there. So you need football people making convicted, smart, not looking back football decisions. They've got to be empowered. I mean, to a much lesser extent. That's kind of why, I've talked to a handful of GMs the last few years, and I respect the GMs who are willing to cut against that grain. Like Joe Shane with the Giants. I mean, Daniel Jones is still the quarterback there. He
played great last week,
and he looks great this year. Really, I know they're 2-3. They could easily be 4-1. Like, they see something, at least now. I mean, they're not tied to him beyond this year. They can move on. But it's my point is, it's a very unpopular decision to pay Daniel Jones, stick with Daniel Jones, because you think he can build something with Brian Dable. The Falcons, Terry Fontenot, we talked at the Combine right ahead of that signing of Kirk Cousins. Not only do they pay Kirk Cousins, they draft Michael Penix. Everybody loses their minds. But they know how important that position is. And what did Terry Fontenot do minutes after that pick? He brings up the Green Bay Packers and the way that they've always done business. Drafting quarterbacks when you don't need them. And Ron gets into the origins of that philosophy too, by the way. I mean, that started when he was with Al Davis and the Raiders, and they get Darryl LaMonica. He was with the Buffalo Bills in the 60s. This is a trivia question that everybody should pop on their friends. There's only 2 quarterbacks in the history of football with a winning percentage above 800. Otto Graham and Darryl LaMonica.
Wow, I wouldn't have guessed it.
They get Darryl LaMonica, then that allows them to draft Ken Stabler, and they kind of get that thing going. So he never forgot that. So obviously, people listening, maybe there's some young folks who don't remember. Even after Brett Favre hits, they're drafting Mark Brunell, Matt Hasselbeck, Aaron Brooks. Yeah, and it's just too important of a position. And you know what is a good thing to remember too, Peter, is I think Ron, when he took this job, it could have been easy for him to get all gloom and doom. Free agencies looming. Who in the hell wants to live in Northeast Wisconsin? The Athletic just had their player poll, and Green Bay still voted the number 1 place that players do not like to go to. So that's never really going to change. But instead of thinking about what can go wrong and why does this job stink, he looked at all the inherent advantages, not having an owner, being empowered. It's cold. Guess what? That's a home field advantage.
Yeah.
You can draft players who are equipped to play in the cold, and then play off of that, and then they win, 25 in a row at home. So I think he just realized, all right, there's not a lot to do in Green Bay, Wisconsin for the 24-year-old who has a lot of money and wants to spend it. But let's make this as player-friendly as we possibly can. I mean, he was talking to as many people as he could to get the best barbers for players.
I love that anecdote, yeah.
He's doing so many little things to kind of play into that inherent advantage that he did have. So I think that's probably another lesson for teams. Like, instead of complaining about, woe is me, what could go wrong, why is this? You got to look at your situation and everything that can go right. That's what Ron Wolf did.
Yeah, this team, and I know we've talked a little about this before, maybe a lot, about the Packers' history with quarterbacks. But didn't it make you think, hey, maybe we're all wrong about Malik Willis when the Packers traded for him? And lo and behold, he comes out and plays his butt off for 2 games. And it's just sort of this is not a coincidence. There is a history here of this incubation process. And it goes back to Ron Wolf. I mean, Ron Wolf hired Brian Gutekunst, the same model that they use for cornerbacks, for receivers, for a slew of positions. Brian Gutekunst is using the Ron Wolf model, which is really the Al Davis model. And Brian Gutekunst, I love that Gutekunst will say, this is actually goes back to Al Davis. He knows the history. He knows the why. He knows all of that stuff. When you have a process, I think there's a lot of teams that when you're constantly cycling through guys, front office people, coaches, you don't have a process to fall back on. And I have to believe that process is a big reason why the Packers have continued to have success. Like Ron Wolf laid that foundation in Green Bay.
He absolutely did. And I'll even take it a step further too. Like look at everyone who worked under Ron Wolf. John Dorsey doesn't get the credit he deserves building the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, he was the one on the phone with the Bills to get that pick that turned into Patrick Mahomes.
Yep.
Like, so you've got John Dorsey. I mean, his fingerprints are all over the NFL forever. Bringing Patrick Mahomes to the Kansas City Chiefs. John Schneider, the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, they acquired Matt Flynn, and we're all thinking, oh, this is Matt Flynn's great chance. But that same year, they draft Russell Wilson. Right?
Yeah.
Acquiring a quarterback when you don't necessarily need a quarterback. And I can still remember that was one of those decisions. You almost remember exactly where you were when they made. I remember being at Hagemeister Park with some buddies there in Green Bay, having a few cold pops when you heard, oh, they're going to start Russell Wilson over Matt Flynn after seeing him in training camp and a preseason game. And before he was this cornball, Mr. Unlimited.
Yes.
Russell Wilson was the hardest working person in that building.
Yeah.
And they went with him. They didn't look back. So, I mean, it's all over. I mean, Brian Gutekunst, he was hired in 1999 as a scout by Ron Wolf. Ted Thompson before that, scout underneath Ron Wolf.
And Ty, remind me who runs the New England Patriots right now?
Oh, yeah, that would be his son, Elliot Wolf. And what did they do? They drafted Drake May. And you know what? Let's give Elliot Wolf some credit here, too. Yeah, maybe the Browns, they probably take Josh Allen, number one, if they could have a do-over. But he is the one. He was the driving force in that building who believed in Baker Mayfield. I mean, everything that we're seeing in Baker Mayfield right now, the leadership, just that, words
the bravado,
can't necessarily say on this podcast. He's got that to him. Guys want to run through a wall for Baker Mayfield. That's what Elliot Wolf loved in him out of Oklahoma. And he was the one, I think, that elevated him as a prospect. Now, this isn't just some mid to late first round pick. Like he's somebody that can lead your team. So I think it's probably important to give him a little credit for having that sense in him and Baker Mayfield then as well.
We got plenty more with Ty Dunne coming up to close out Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, NFL fans can get a monster return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you pull up your FanDuel app. You check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I mentioned this recently. I did this a couple weeks ago. I meant to bet on the Giants before the game. Forgot. Pulled up the live odds and actually got a better number that the Giants eventually covered because I was able to do it. Look live. Okay, I see that it's the game. I was able to see right in the app. Oh, the game has already started, but I'm getting a good live line. Let me bet on it. Right now, you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Don't even have to win it. Just got to place it. $200 in bonus bets. What are you waiting for? Go to FanDuel.com to get started. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen. Now for your second listen, you can go find Locked On NFL, now with 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. And what's interesting is Drake May could not be a more different kind of football player than Baker Mayfield. And I think if you go back and you mentioned all those quarterbacks, like Matt Hasselbeck did not play anything like Brett Favre. Mark Brunell did not play anything like Brett Favre. Aaron Brooks did have some Favre in him. He was that strong armed, like I'm gonna zip this sucker in there. But to be able to say, okay, we have a type, but also we're flexible on this. Like not everyone has to do this one thing like this. I think the same is true with the receivers. Like the Packers have a receiver model, but no one would say Greg Jennings and Jordy Nelson were identical football players, or Devontae Adams and Randall Cobb. Like that's not how it works. And so it's fascinating to see all these years later in Green Bay. Like Jaden Reed is a great example. They were like, okay, Jaden, you're a little smaller than we normally like. Can you get up to 195, which is kind of where we want our receivers? Jaden Reed said, yep, sure. And look at what is happening now. He's one of the best receivers in the league through 5 games. This stuff doesn't happen by accident, man. Like it is almost comical to me that they're still doing this with these receivers.
And it's comical to me as Ron Wolf is reliving this all, and it's such a blueprint that other GMs could follow. Why more teams don't draft quarterbacks when they don't need quarterbacks?
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't get it. Like what, the Falcons are getting mocked to the high heavens, and Penix is older than usual. Okay, whatever. Those are minor details. It's too important of a position. It's just too important to not be drafting and signing and thinking about the quarterback position all of the time. And I think that Green Bay, that's why we're sitting here talking about the Packers in the terms that we can talk about the Packers. They drafted Jordan Love when they didn't need to draft Jordan Love.
Yeah.
Pissed off Aaron Rodgers. We almost made it 20 minutes.
Yeah, we almost made it. We almost made it.
But, they knew that it would make him mad. He drank his tequila that night, a deviation from the scotch, and they didn't care. Right? I mean, Leroy Butler always says this, that G on the helmet is going to be bigger than any specific player. And it's another thing that kind of makes Green Bay different. It is about the team and the brand, and there's something larger at play here that Ron Wolf really helped bring back. And they're going to have GMs that make unpopular decisions. That is at the very top of the list.
For sure.
It's paying off. It's going to pay off with Jordan Love as quarterback.
Yeah, let's close this down this way then. There was some discussion with Ron about Sterling Sharpe being not being in the Hall of Fame. Let me add Mike Holmgren to that list. I don't understand why he and Mike Shanahan are not already as coaches in the Hall of Fame. But let's do the Sterling Sharpe bit, because those of us old enough to remember, and those of us capable of working YouTube, you can go watch the highlights. He was unbelievable. And it must have just been gut-wrenching in that building when it becomes obvious that he's not going to be able to play anymore, because he truly was a transcendent talent.
Man, and unbelievable talent. And, Brett is so quick to sing the praises of Sterling Sharpe too, and just say, as a young quarterback, like as we all know, he didn't know what a nickel defense was as a quarterback, but he knew where Sterling Sharpe was.
Yeah, he knew where 84 was. Throw that guy the ball.
Yeah, I mean the epic wild card throw to Sterling Sharpe at Detroit. That drive, I mean, Favre is screwing up left and right, and guys are lined up in the wrong positions, and he's rolling left, and he probably should run, but he knew Sharpe was down there somewhere, so he just chucked it to him. I wonder where Brett Favre's career goes if he doesn't have Sterling Sharpe in place, right? As a reckless quarterback who doesn't really understand defenses, and if Mike Holmgren calls a play and there's a deep route in that play, he's just throwing it deep. Like he doesn't care if that's the third or fourth option within that play. So I think that Favre understood, Ron Wolf understood, like he knew it helped to have a talent. The best wide receiver, maybe next to Jerry Rice in football in that era on this roster when he took the job. And I didn't know this, like in 86, Ron Wolf was a candidate to take over the Packers as well. And the two best players on the team then were James Lofton and Ken Ruckers.
Yeah.
And he said, here I am in 91, and it's Sterling Sharpe and Ken Ruckers. So he knew that there was at least a couple building blocks there to work around. And he is a player we don't think about enough. We don't talk about enough. I give Sterling Sharpe credit. I mean, he was in TV on ESPN for a little while, but he got out of it. NFL Network. You don't really hear from him. You don't really see him. So he's kind of maybe a little forgotten from public consciousness, but we shouldn't forget about him. He is worth that YouTube search. He was an unbelievable wide receiver.
That Lions throw is my earliest football memory. I'm giving away my age here a little bit, but that is the first football play I can remember watching on TV. I remember watching it in my grandparents' basement. And yeah, I hope I'll never forget it. Ty, I appreciate the time as always. People should go check out that Ron Wolf interview. You've got the Q&A up on the website now. You can just read it if you don't want to watch it, all that stuff. But subscribe to go along, and we'll talk to you soon, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much to all the Packer fans out there who subscribe to go along. I mean, you guys are the backbone of this thing, so really appreciate it.
All right, thanks to Ty for joining the show. Always great to talk to him. I've got the Packers. We didn't even really do predictions with Alex Clancy on our crossover Thursday show. I got the Packers like 30-24 in this one. I think the Packers offense gets going in this one. The Cardinals, I wrote about this today for the Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. They can't stop anybody. And they have basically the worst defense in the league in terms of allowing offenses to stay on track. Well, the Packers have not been able to consistently stay on track, but they've been able to create a ton of explosives. Well, the Cardinals can't really stop those either. So if you're going to let teams stay on track and the Packers are trying to get on track, this is the perfect time to get right. I know that anyone that going back to 2019, I kept saying that. And they never really did, but they still won 13 games. So here we are. And maybe it started in 2018 when they didn't win that many games. But this is your chance. If you can't score on this team, if you can't move the ball on this team, maybe you're not who we thought you were. That's the reality. All right, Sunday. I was going to say back Monday, but no, we're going to be here on Sunday on YouTube. For those of you who want to have a live YouTube experience after the game, we'll be live on YouTube. So go subscribe on YouTube. Go subscribe on all the social media channels, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter X machine, so you can stay locked on Packers.